For me, it's understanding the interaction between a user and a piece of software, a device, an electronic device of some sort. I've also heard it described as something that can be related to organisations and their processes, but in truth I see it more as something that's related to my job, which is about understanding design in terms of user interface design, so how a user interacts with the device.
Interactive design is a really, really huge category, so it's sort of hard to pin down a specific definition of what it is. I kind of was thinking about this a few minutes ago, and I kind of came up with a brief definition that I might sort of use, and it's designing systems and products that users can interact with. It's a very interactive, or interaction design is a very user-focused process. It's really focused on usability, solving problems, user behavior, and user experience when they're using your product or service or website or whatever it is. It could be something as simple as a form on a website, so figuring out what information you need to get from users and how they get it to you and what that's used for. So for instance, a travel website looking for cheap plane tickets, how do you design those forms in such a way that makes it really easy for the user to get the information that they want and for you to provide them with the information that you have. Could be something like a phone interface. So if you're designing an application for a phone like the iPhone or for Google Android application, it might be how do you translate something that might be on a 15-inch computer monitor down to a screen that's this big. What elements do you leave out? What elements do you bring in? What goals are you going to accomplish? So I think all of those things. It could even be something like how's the dashboard laid out in a car? Yeah. How does someone interact with that information? How do they know what speed they're going? Things like that. So it ranges from like typography to sort of code and color and space, and even with the new sort of touch screen interfaces, how can people use the body to interact with the device?
I think interaction design to many people probably means many different things. To me, it's a way of engaging the user into creating a dialogue with the user. So I think the way interaction design has changed over time has gone from pushing information to now creating an environment where you're not only pushing but you're enabling some kind of dialogue as well. So say, for example, the BBC website, it pushes information but it allows you to engage with the information and personalise the information, so it's creating more of a kind of push and a kind of pull. So to me it's about engaging and using relevant technologies to create an interesting user experience.
Something that's been really taking off in interactive design in the last few years is sort of geospatial awareness, being able to sort of tag your location. And there's a couple apps for the iPhone that sort of will show you where your friends are, and they're developing like clouds. Like San Francisco has one where the red areas on the map will show where the highest concentration of people are, GPS enabled. So you can sort of see where the crowds are on a Friday night, things like that, which is really interesting. And I guess part of interactive design is as it relates to sort of location is how do you visualize that sort of information. So if there's 20 people in a pub that you want to go to, is there a way to visualize that in an interface without compromising privacy and stuff like that too? So there's those sorts of issues too when you start getting into locative services. If you look at the success of Google and how sort of the important role that Google plays in a lot of people's lives with search and with their services and email, their interface is so simple, and it's not necessarily good graphic design typographically, but because it achieves its purpose really quickly and really simply, it actually is good design.
How could we live without Google now? I just can't imagine, not being able to think of any topic off the top of my head and just being able to find out instantly what that information, what it means, and how I can use it within my life. So I think it's turned the world on its head.
So do you think it's like turned on its head to the extent that we become dependent?
I think we have. I think, you know, within a short space of time, you know, probably, you know, between the last 10 and 12 years, we've gone from something which has been all about a printed document, going down to the library, talking to people, which I suppose is where it's probably has its most negative effect, because usually if you wanted to find something out, you'd ask somebody, or you'd know somebody who'd know somebody, and there was more of a kind of dialogue which went on. But now I guess there's things like social network groups, or there's, you know, you're able to post information, there's, you know, you can ask a question and somebody will immediately have an answer to it. So I think the dynamics have changed the way.
I suppose I think back to growing up with computers in the house, being enticed by mobile phones, email. I think it's more important than ever now, and also more important now that there are so many choices in regard to different devices made by different manufacturers, made for different platforms. So I think it's such an incredible industry in terms of needing that design thought process behind.
So you know, it's the same thing. You could have a really nice looking building, but if it's really shoddy engineering, it's going to fall down. It's sort of the same thing with the website. Like if you have a really nice design, but you can't really build it correctly, then it's not. I mean, it might look good, but it's not good design overall because it wasn't built on a good structure.
Yeah.
Being a designer has always fascinated me because there's no hard and fast rule to how you organise your own time and how you think creatively. There's not too much of a set process and guidelines for being a good designer. And in terms of the type of design activities that you can get involved in are very broad. The other thing that fascinates me about being a designer and what made me want to be a designer is that I always thought in my mind that I would become bored working at one company. What a designer allows me to do is to almost get involved in lots of different companies for the period of time that I work with them on a project. And so clients that I work for are financial services companies to basically sort of retail organisations. So almost at the end of the projects that I work on, I feel as I've worked in so many different types of companies, and so I never get bored. I became a designer because I didn't want to be bored.
So how long have you worked at Addison?
Addison for about 5.5 years, and in the design industry for about 14.
I think try as many things as possible. Immerse yourself in lots of different things. I don't think I'd just look at particularly online things to get your influences. I'd say, you know, you need to be looking at things in general to influence what you do. I think, you know, the best ideas aren't from looking at other websites. They're from going to art galleries. They're from going to you know, exhibitions, or, you know, going to the ICA or the Barbican, or, you know, talking to your friends or looking through magazines. I think, you know, the way that I would approach it is to immerse yourself in lots and lots of different things and talk to people and share ideas, and, you know, try and almost get your own little things off the ground, you know, exhibiting your work in some way, you know. Just because it's all on screen, it doesn't mean it needs to end up on screen. There's no reason why it can be printed out, and, you know, in some way, you know, the whole idea of interaction is the whole idea, you know, they can kind of, you know, become part of it. But I think I look at the medium and look at kind of where you think you could take it. I think work experience is really important as well. If you're able to get some work experience in an agency, just making those links to people like YCN and, you know, agencies who are kind of subscribing to that, and just kind of get your name around and just be, you know, diligent. Get yourself a website, get yourself a blog, and just kind of get yourself a voice, I think.